Nancy, and
Good
good evening
evening. Good
to
evening,
Chef.
everybody.
Good morning, Manila. It is
Yeah.
morning here, right?
Yes, yes, good morning. And good evening, Chef Andre Guerrero. And guys, thank you for watching on the live stream. And most especially those watching on the replay. We're so excited to talk to what our generation called the OG of the Filipino American chefs. And one of the culinary icon based in LA. And Chef Andre has been promoting Filipino food when nobody was promoting Filipino food, I guess, in the US. So we really wanted to talk to him about his Filipino culinary DNA and, together as we search for our own culinary DNA. So if you wanted to, please join us in our discussion this morning with Chef Andre. Broadcasting live in LA. And then, of course, together with Nancy Lumen-Reyes, Reyes Lumen, broadcasting directly in, saan ka ba? Houston, Texas.
Yahoo!
Yahoo! And my name is Anton Diaz, founder of Our Awesome Planet. We're awesome live with Chef Andre Guerrero. Can
Hey,
you
yes!
do a short film? All right. So, Chef Andre, maybe let's start with a short introduction. How did you became a chef? I know you moved to LA 6 year when you were 6 years old, and maybe can you tell us that story, how you got started, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, there's probably a lot of context I need to talk about on my way to being a chef. Um, everybody has their own story. It's always very different and unique. And I mean, even my background is a little unique. I was born in the Philippines, and uh, my family were big foodies. My aunt had owned a restaurant in Manila. It was called Costa Brava, which
Mm-hmm.
was very Eurocentric. And what I learned when I went to visit in the Philippines, this was a while back, that even the Eurocentric restaurants were very Filipino. They could only exist in the Philippines, and um, um, but my and then my uh, my ethnicity is pretty mixed up. I'm mostly Filipino. On my father's side, my grandmother is French, and then on my mother's side, there's Spanish, a lot of Spanish, and a little bit of Chinese. So, it's my background is pretty mixed up, but it's mostly Filipino because a lot of Filipino on both sides. And my sons here, their mother is her ethnicity is Yugoslavian, I think English and a little bit of German. And so one day my son asked me, he said, "Dad, am I Filipino?" And I said, "Well," so I explained to him all the ethnicities combined. And I said, just tell people you're a Mexican. And, but, most people, because of me, they identify my sons as being Filipino. So, the journey here, I was about 6 years old when we moved to America. We first moved to San Francisco. I lived there for 2 years, and we had a lot of family around us, and of course, um, we struggled a little bit financially, and big family. There was 10 kids eventually, and we used to be very tight knit family, and the relatives that we had, and there was always there was always a lot of parties, a lot of birthdays, and my father was a pastry chef, and he looked forward to those family events, and he would always bake. If there was a birthday, my father wouldn't just bake a cake. He would bake 3 cakes. He would bake, spend the whole day, and that was his passion. And he taught us at a very early age. I think I was 9. My father started teaching me French pastry. So when I was 9 years old, I knew how to make sponge cakes. I knew how to make pot au choux. I knew how to make pastry cream, vanilla sauce. I knew a lot of the basics, and so that always stayed with me. That background, and never thinking I would use it to become a chef. If you like to eat, uh, and you know how to cook, you're always going to be applying your cooking skills, and if you like to eat well, you're going to focus on doing that part very well. And so that stayed with me. And then throughout high school, my mother started a little catering business. And again, we still had a lot of parties, and I remember her teaching me how to bone out a chicken to make galantina. And I thought, how many people know how to do that? And make the force meat, and then there was a lot of Filipino food, and back then we didn't have canned coconut milk. And
Yeah.
one of the chores that I hated, I don't know why I always got chosen for this job, was to scrape the little coconuts on that little scraper with a little bench to
Yeah.
gata.
We call it caballo.
Yeah, so that was growing up. There was a lot of catered events. There was a lot of big parties. All the holidays, and we had to help my mom. And I developed a lot of skills in cooking. I knew how to cook Filipino food, and my mom was a great cook. I mean, my family, they wouldn't, in a way, they were kind of snobs when it came to eating, because um, they knew how to cook well, and my family in the Philippines knew how to cook well, so we always ate well.
You were catering to a close Filipino, mostly Filipinos then, or already with foreigners?
With foreigners, but there were some Filipinos, but they wanted Filipino food. They
Yeah.
didn't want, uh, they called my mom because they knew her reputation. And I remember one time, so moving forward a little bit, I was at UCLA. I went to art school. I studied painting and ceramics there. So that was my passion, to study fine arts. And I had an opportunity to work with a very prominent ceramicist, Adrian Sachs, and his works are world renowned. And he was teaching at UCLA. So we had every year they have a big fundraiser for the art department, and my mom volunteered to to cater the food part. And because of that, Adrian gave me several pieces of his to
Wow.
use. And so
Still with you?
oh yeah, and so we came out ahead on that deal, and because these pieces are priceless, and we still have them. So again, moving forward, I went to art school, and the funny thing is, I didn't have any Filipino friends until I went to college. So growing up in Los Angeles, we lived in a neighborhood. Um, that was very Hispanic. There was a lot of Italians and a lot of Caucasians. And, we were trying to assimilate. So I lost the language. I lost my Tagalog and my Spanish. I actually had to take Spanish in college. And I thought, well, this is weird. I spoke fluent Spanish growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
now I lost it and I have to relearn it. And so I grew up around very different people. The interesting thing is our school, we were the first Filipino family to go to St. Bernard's Catholic school. And that was our parish. That was our church parish. And now today, that school is about 75% Filipinos. So
Wow.
there was a huge migration of Filipinos that came to Los Angeles. I want to say it started probably in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, we were kind of a anomaly in the neighborhood. They didn't know what Filipinos were. So, but the culture stays with you, and it stays with you through food. Maybe you lose a language and a lot of things about being Filipino, but the food always stays with you.
That's nice to. That's a nice insight.
Yeah.
That's actually your culinary DNA showing off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody out there, any culture, wherever you grow up. I mean, if I was born in America and, my DNA would be McDonald's and who knows what it would look like. But, because my family, they were very French oriented, their cooking, and at least my father. And so whenever they talked about opening a restaurant, they wanted to open a French restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So I started studying, French cooking, because I thought, okay, if you want to be a chef and you want to be a serious chef, you study French cuisine. And even now, the culinary schools, the whole regimen, the whole structure of the kitchen is based around French cooking. And so my first professional experience was based on, the French standard of cooking. And never really thinking that I would ever do Filipino food when I got started. And then one day, my parents seriously started talking about opening a restaurant.
For
And-
you.
Well, for the family. So my family were going to work there. My older brother went to Belgium. He went to chef school, and he studied at one of the most prominent culinary schools in Belgium. And my other brother studied locally at Trade Tech. And I had gone back to school and studied mostly through extension courses through UCLA. I studied mostly restaurant management. And and then one day we all came together to work at the family's restaurant. And my father insisted on doing French food. And I said, I think we should do something different. I wanted to do something based on the way we eat. I said, why don't we do, a French restaurant, but let's do some of the food though. Let's present some of our Spanish food, some Filipino food, because this is how we ate at home. And the same in the Philippines, you eat callos and a lot of dishes that
Yes.
Filipinos have adopted came from the Spaniards.
Yeah.
And we ate some Chinese food, and my dad looked at me and thought I was crazy. He said, "What are you talking about? It has to be French, or it has to be Spanish, or it has to be continental. It has to be this. You can't start introducing a bunch of different things to the menu." And I said, "Well, how about this? We'll call it Cafe Le Monde, a cafe of the world." And we did this bistro style restaurant. And my dad kept shaking his head, but he gave in. And well, lo and behold, we got the attention of a very prominent local restaurant critic who happened to live nearby in Glendale.
What's his name?
His name is Paul Wallach,
Okay.
and he's passed away. This was back in 1979.
Wow.
And but he had a huge following, and he was watching us build this restaurant because I painted this big mural in the front of the restaurant. So I thought, okay, this art background is finally paying off. I get to paint the sign. And so right after we opened, Paul Wallach came in, and then he started raving about us on his radio show, and mobs of people started showing up. And then he got the attention of Lois Dwan, who was the restaurant critic for the LA Times, probably the most powerful restaurant critic in Los Angeles. If she gave you a good review, you would have lines out the door. It was a different time. There was maybe 2 or 3 restaurant critics that you wanted to review your restaurant, and that was it. It was gold. And of course, she loved what we were doing, and that was it. There was no looking back. My career took off, and I had to learn on the fly how to organize the kitchen, because I hadn't worked at a very busy restaurant. So my brothers and I were stumbling all over each other. At the end of the night, it's like, oh my God, that was horrible. What did we do? How can we do this better? So we would sit there for hours taking notes how to reorganize the kitchen. And then the next night we would be slammed. We would be so busy. It was a little bit better, but it was still madness in the kitchen.
But before that, Andre, what were the dishes that the critics enjoyed, or that they particularly mentioned?
Well, we made this oxtail dish that my mom used to make. It was we called it oxtail catalana. But I don't even know if my family in the Philippines would eat this, but I've never seen it anywhere else. But it was baked oxtails with very sweet and sour tomato sauce with a lot of onions, and roasted red pepper. And they raved about that. We made lengua estofada. My grandmother, I think, added capers to it and brandy, but just like the version that you eat in the Philippines, with some minor tweaks from my French grandmother. And then we had lumpia on the menu, lumpia Shanghai. And I think we had adobo. I made a chicken adobo. And nobody had done anything like this before, to introduce so many crazy dishes. I mean, we had French dishes. We had coquille Saint-Jacques, very French. And I'm trying to think what. And then we had like a steak au poivre, the pomme frite with creamy peppercorn sauce. So it was all over the place, but somehow it all worked together. It worked well. It wasn't, there wasn't anything incongruent about the dishes that were on that menu. And I think the food critics recognize that somebody, whoever was in the kitchen, loves to eat, because we could tell this is food that I want to eat. A foodie would want to eat.
Yeah.
So I guess that was it. It was kind of like food from a foodie's perspective.
So you were already the chef then?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I mean, my co-chef with my brothers, but they were very shy. They wouldn't come out and talk to. So I went out to talk to Lois Dwan, and we had a great conversation. So as far as she was concerned, I was the guy in the kitchen because I was the one talking to her. So she wrote about me. And then later on, I went to, several years later, I was at a restaurant in Malibu, Alice's Restaurant. And she remembered me. And again, she wrote a glowing review of what I was doing at the time. It's a very seafood-oriented menu then. But again, I still had my little Filipino flavors and Spanish and French, and so that never really went away. And for some reason at the time, Filipino food really wasn't catching on. I mean, people talked about the lumpia Shanghai, and they talked about adobo and certain things, but my big fear was, if I went too far out, if I ever did anything that was so Filipino and so ethnic, I don't know how it would have been, received, except maybe for Filipinos. And I kind of made my reputation. I mean, cooking for everybody in the city. It wasn't, it wasn't a focus on any one group. And then eventually, I mean, people always wanted to write about me being Filipino, and they wanted me to cook Filipino food. So
Good.
I never got away from that. So and that's fine. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of my Filipino cooking because I do it very well. And I grew up eating it, so I know the taste. And if you ask me to cook something, I would, maybe it wouldn't taste like a regional, very specific regional style, but I know it'll be delicious. I know it'll be good because I will be very conscientious about the ingredients that I use, the quality of the products that I use, and it will be good. And if I were talking to a young chef right now who's pursuing a career, I would tell them, don't ever compromise on the quality of the products that you use and the freshness, because no matter what, it's going to be really good. You can't screw up a bad piece of meat. Well, actually, maybe I know some chefs maybe who could do that, but you're giving yourself a big head start by focusing on the ingredients.
That's very good advice. It's very important for these young ones to know that.
Yeah.
Especially there's a lot of processed ingredients that will make it easy for them, to cook something in 10 minutes and it's out there, but it's all from the bottle or something.
Yeah. So I have a question. Chef. How did Filipino food really, or did it took off in America? Because you've seen it, from the start. What was the key points? And what do you think we still need to do to push it further?
Well, I think let me go back a little bit. Back in '95, um, I went back to the Philippines, and I hadn't gone back for well since I was 6 years old, and I saw a lot of things, and I saw a lot of young chefs who were coming to America to study in the culinary schools here, and then going back to Manila to cook. And um, at the time, from what I saw, it looked like the Philippines were about 10 years behind in the cooking to what the American counterparts were doing. We were innovating like crazy here in Los Angeles and New York, the big cities. I mean, even here, if it started in Los Angeles or Seattle or started in New York, well, it found its way to a lot of rural communities in America. It found its way to the Philippines, and there's some amazing food that's being cooked there now, and I want to go back so I can see that. And a lot of technique, and I'll tell you the biggest influence to what's happened in cooking: the internet.
Yeah.
When I was coming up, I mean, think about this. You can go on YouTube. You can go on a website, a Michelin-starred chef's website. You can see the food. You can hear them talk about their philosophies. Um, People are paying more attention to the freshness of the product. I mean, we've got farmers markets like crazy. That didn't exist before. When I was coming up in the business, where did you get this produce? Well, there was a lot of good produce, but now it's accessible from the small farmers growing it. And I think it's happening in the Philippines also.
Yes, it is.
It,
It's
it was
happening.
very difficult to find, any kind of exotic ingredient in Manila, 25 years ago. And now a lot of that has changed. And I mean, even when I was there, it was hard to find a good cup of coffee. I won't get
Now
into,
we have.
I won't get into the politics of why that was so, but a lot of things have changed. But the internet has changed a lot. You
Mhm.
want to know what I'm doing? Well, you could probably Google me and learn something about my cooking. You might even find menus that I've done. And so, since I've retired, I've been cleaning a lot of old files, and I'm looking at old menus that I did. And a lot of it is still very relevant today, but a lot of it, uh, I've moved on. I've evolved in a very big way. But,
Your cookbook is overdue.
well, let's work on that together, Nancy.
Yeah,
I would love to
become
do,
Yeah.
known. Yeah.
because I think, if I wrote a cookbook today, what I would want to do is make it relevant to this time, how people's eating habits have changed, not compromise the flavor, but elevate the cooking, because uh, we're using really good ingredients, and maybe making it a little bit healthier.
Do you
And
think, do you think that the young chefs now still regard or have a trace of a culinary DNA? Are they developing it, or are they just interneting their profile?
uh, the good ones will have a natural DNA. They will have uh, they will organically develop their cooking style, because their story is genuine. my story is what I've told you so far. It's genuine to me. It's unique to me because of the path that I've taken. And so anybody out there, get in touch with your family, your grandmother, whoever
Yes.
the teachers were who um, were doing the cooking. I mean, I know some chefs over here. They're Filipino, but they really don't have the background, and they want so badly to uh, be relevant. And I told them, it's like don't try to reinvent Filipino food. And because every time I've tried to do that, I would have some failures. So what I would really like to see is I would like to see chefs embrace Filipino food. I mean, if I go to China, if I go to Hong Kong, do I want to eat deconstructed Chinese food cooked by some hipster young chef who studied at the Cordon Bleu? No, I want that old Chinese master, cooking my food, who doesn't know anything else but the highest level of Chinese cooking. If I go to Thailand, I want to eat Thai food from a chef who learned how to cook for the royalty in Thailand. There's chefs who train to cook for the royal family, and it's a very specific style of cooking. And it's very rare to find that. But that is probably the truest, the highest, the most elevated style of Thai cooking. You better believe that's the food that I want to eat. And and it's interesting. I'm going to Italy next week, and I want to eat real Italian food. People used to tell me, "Well, is your Italian food's not authentic?" It's like, well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about genuine, Italian food? Are you talking about authentic? Because here's something that people don't understand about Italian cuisine, and I'm sure it applies to the Philippines. That there's regions. If you're from Puglia, you only eat food from that region. I was in Rome 2 years ago, and we sold a lot of cacio e pepe, and it's a pasta dish, at my restaurant, Maximiliano. And I thought it was really good, but I wanted to eat it. This is the dish in Rome. If you go to Rome, there's maybe 4 pasta dishes that they're famous for, and this is a Roman style of pasta. And my pasta was every bit as good. My cacio e pepe, my what's the other one? Carbonara. And you go to Milan. We're going to be in Milan. They don't eat a lot of pasta. They eat a lot of polenta, and the cheeses are different. And you go to Sicily, and they use a lot of tomatoes, a lot of tomato sauce. And so if you go to the Philippines, you go to Pampanga. There is a very distinct style of cuisine there. You go to Visayas, you go to
seafood.
Yeah, and Batangas, they use a lot of coconuts. Coconut milk. It's rich, and there's chilies, and the bagong is very different in the different regions. But the most important thing is, you better enjoy eating great food, and you better be able to recognize what great cuisine tastes like. Because if you don't, how are you going to know if your food's any good? And this is it. I mean, I spend a lot of time eating, trying to eat the style of food, then and that becomes part of your knowledge, your skill set, is being able to recognize the nuance and subtleties of, from one Filipino chef to another. And I'm sorry, Nancy, did I answer your question? Because I kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. Yes, you did. No, actually, I'm the audience here would also be like, correct me if I'm wrong, Anton, but these would be chefs that, young ones who are
Yes.
who are aspiring to be like, okay, I want to be like Andre. But I'd want to do it in, quick time. Some of them are like that because
Well,
time is so precious to them, and they need to make more money and
okay, what you
entertainment.
need to do is if you want to cook Filipino food, you better learn everything you can about every part of Filipino cooking. Learn the different styles wherever you're from. If you're from Pampanga, get to know the best food of that region, and because you can't fake it. You can't say,
Mhm.
"Oh,
You can't
my
fake it.
grandma
Yeah.
used to cook, but I kind of have a vague memory. But I'm a Filipino, and I want to cook Filipino food." But how deep is your knowledge of Filipino food? How deep is your skill level of cooking that food? And
Okay.
if it's shallow, then your cooking is going to be shallow. If it's very deep and rich, then that's what'll come out. And so pay attention. If you want to cook Italian food, then you better go to Italy, or you better
Yeah.
search out the best Italian food that's out there.
So,
Yeah.
so now you're not combining, let's say, Ital Filipino or Spanish Pinoy or uh,
Ital-American, I
sisig,
think.
paella sisig or something like that. No
Well,
fusion for you.
actually, I did towards the end. Um, I, but I started incorporating some of my Filipino background into my Italian cooking. Like
Mhm.
I made a ravioli with an adobo filling. So we
Mm.
made adobo raviolis, and the sauce was a little French, a little Italian, but there was a very distinctive adobo flavor, and people flipped out. They loved this, but I couldn't have pulled that dish off, 20 years ago, and it was because I learned how to master my cooking skills in that genre, the Italian food,
Mhm.
and I was able to integrate things. I was able to start deconstructing, but you can't start out, doing that.
Doing
Uh,
that. Yeah.
I mean, we made another dish that was a big hit. I made gnocchi, but instead
What?
of gnocchi,
Gnocchi.
the little
Yeah.
Italian
Gnocchi.
potato
Yeah.
dumpling,
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I
yes.
used ube. I
Oh,
Yeah.
mean,
wow.
so I
Yeah.
found some fresh ube, and I baked that,
Nice.
and made it just like the potato gnocchi, but substituting um, the ube.
Ube.
The ube. Wow, that must
So
be
actually, I think if you go on Instagram from the Maximiliano website, or Instagram is still up, so I posted all those dishes on there.
yeah. Now, my question, chef. Because Filipino food is really, what do you think? Is Filipino food already embraced in the U.S.? And what does it take still to push it up? Because I'm really impressed with how you were ahead of your time. I think
Yes.
in everything, no, from the bistro concept to the ube milkshake, which Shake Shack copied here here in Manila. And
That's funny. Yeah,
which
somebody stole our name also. Somebody opened an Oinkster in
y-
Manila somewhere.
yes.
Really?
Yeah, I thought of, sending him a cease and desist, but I didn't want to spend any energy doing that. So I left it
Yeah,
alone.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But yeah. So what do you think? Because you're ahead, and we're thinking here ahead. After the post-pandemic scenario, what does it take? And is the Western world embracing Filipino food already? Like the way they embrace Vietnam or Thai food or Hong Kong food?
well, here is what I have to say about that. So, um, one of the problems that I saw for a long time is anytime there was an opportunity where journalists would go to the Philippines or they would interview uh, Filipino chefs, there was always this. They would talk about things like balut, dinuguan, and in a way, it felt like they were trying to sensationalize Filipino food by looking at how weird. Well, what other weird things do you eat? What's the weirdest thing about Filipino food? Well, how can you take Filipino food seriously if you're looking for a sensationalist story? You know, yeah, they eat balut in I think Thailand and Vietnam, but they don't. There's no focus on eating a partially incubated duck egg from those countries, and I love. I go to Spain, and one of my favorite things is eating blood pudding. There's nothing weird about that. But when you see Filipinos talk about it, it's almost like they're kind of shy about it. Like, oh yeah, we have this blood stew. It's like I love dinuguan. It's delicious.
Yeah, my
But
favorite.
when you put it in those contexts, um, the world sees Filipino food. Well, they eat weird stuff. Well,
Okay.
there's so many amazing dishes in the Philippines. I mean, I can name off if you start somebody off with kare kare, you start them off with Bicol Express. Really good lumpia and noodles that were prepared really well and fresh, and they haven't been sitting around all day, and then you're dishing it up to somebody. That you apply the same principles of a la minute cooking to that food, and it could be amazing. And the other thing somebody once told me, says, how come all your food looks brown? And it's like, well, it's because people get into this mindset. They don't look at it creatively. It's like, I'm just hungry. I know what this tastes like. I know it's delicious. Just put it on the table and let's eat it. It's like, no, you have to spend some time making it look beautiful. And again, you use great ingredients, and you're conscientious about how you prepared everything, and you'll elevate the cooking. Everybody loves Korean food over here, but what
Yeah.
do they go for? Korean barbecue and kimchi and the little banchan, and I love that. But there's some really weird Korean food that I won't get near. The little fermented octopuses and fishes, and that stuff just doesn't look appetizing to me. But I don't look at Korean food. Well, that's all they eat is all that really weird stuff. No, it's delicious. Just like Filipino food, there's so much delicious food.
Mhm.
Uh, so give them the good stuff, and then once they've had all this great stuff, then give them the balut. And I ate balut when I was a kid, and I don't know, maybe as I got older, I'm a little squeamish about eating it. Uh, but I'll try it again.
Anyways,
So let's focus on all the great things. I mean, between the three of us, we could probably come up with a list of
Yeah.
amazing Filipino food
yeah,
that
but I wanted to ask. Okay, so you said I remember you said your son asked you, and Dad, am I Filipino? So from your parents to you and you now to your two sons, right, who are also in the restaurant business, how much of the Filipino DNA or what is their culinary DNA? I don't want to say Filipino. They might not be. But what is
Uh,
their culinary DNA now? Is it
it's not
99% Andre?
no, no. It would probably be close to zero. And their mom raised them. I worked a lot, so they spent a lot of time with their mom. They're vegetarian, and that came
Oh,
from their mom. And they they really didn't eat a lot of Filipino food. I mean, they ate adobo and rice and but they grew up here. They they've assimilated to uh, the culture here in Los Angeles, and um, I love living here. I love one of the things I love about Los Angeles. We have we have great Filipino food now. We have great Italian restaurants. We have great Korean food, amazing Thai food, and everything you could possibly want. We have a very great version of it here. And I know it's happening in the Philippines also. You know, things
Yeah.
have changed a lot. And, uh, I've never met anybody who asked me to cook Filipino food and asked me if I would, you know, cook something, strange. I guess I shouldn't say strange because it's not strange. The idea of balut and binubuan. I mean, that's part of our culture and it's delicious. And I hope everybody gets to try that because uh, it's it's very Filipino. You can't get any more Filipino than that.
Yeah.
But there's also other things. Let's explore a wider range of food.
okay. How did your two sons get into the food business?
Just growing up with me and helping me out with the restaurants, and they spent time there, and you that becomes part of their thing, their life. So when it was time to work, they were always able to get jobs in the business.
Mm.
And then when Oinkster was very popular, uh, my older son Fred and Max also, they were very involved in social media. And the funny thing is, all their friends see me as the chef from the Oinkster. That I started my career cooking burgers and pastrami. They don't know what I did before that, prior to that.
Okay. So you're saying that maybe Filipino food or modern Filipino food will really fly with the help of social media right now, which is happening, I think. You agree?
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I don't. I guess I don't spend enough time with. Oh no, that's not true. I've actually uh, been hanging out with some young Filipino chefs, some very talented up and coming chefs.
Good.
And the one thing that I've been telling them is, don't try to reinvent the Filipino food
Mm-hmm.
because there's not enough people here who know what real Filipino food. Uh, Make real Filipino food, but do it really well. And you know, we don't we don't get tired of eating Filipino food,
Yeah.
and we crave that. I mean, this is if you have family over, or if you spend time in a foreign country and, eating your way through France or Italy or maybe spend some time in Germany, that you come home and then all of a sudden that craving kicks in. It's like, I want to eat, Filipino food.
Now,
You know,
now to your restaurant. I'm just being starstruck now because you're in LA. Were there any Hollywood people who ate at your place, or who liked your food, or in any of your restaurants?
well, yeah, when I was working in Malibu, um, we had so many celebrities. And the funny thing is, at the time, they all came out. We were their neighborhood restaurant. So one night, it was a very busy night. I walk into the dining room, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was sitting at the bar, and with like four Hells Angels and his bodyguard, and they were all driving Harleys, and they were all smoking cigars, and they're all lined up on the bar with their motorcycles parked outside. And then Rod Steiger used to sit at the corner table, window table, and Christy Brinkley used to come in regularly with her parents.
Mm.
Never saw Billy Joel. Bruce Springsteen, um, Princess Stephanie. They were all there in the same night. And funny story, one afternoon, this limo driver walks in, and he asks the manager, "Excuse me, I have Mr. Tom Jones in the car. I was wondering if you have a quiet table where he could sit at where nobody would bother him." And so he looks around and he goes, "Well," he goes, "I've got Rod Steiger over there, Robert Redford's over there with Barbara Streisand, and Olivia Newton-John's over here. I don't think anyone's going to bother Mr. Tom Jones." And the guy looked around and he goes, "Okay, I'll go home." No, I cooked for so many famous people there. And then even when we worked in the Valley, we used to keep a log, which became 5 pages long, of all the celebrities that came in. So yeah, they're everywhere. If you open a restaurant in Los Angeles, you're going to get celebrities just because they like to eat good food.
Yes, that's good. So, chef, what are what's your restaurants now, and are you planning? What's your plan for the future?
Well, I'm slowing down. I say semi-retired because I do go in occasionally to the Oinkster. We only have one now. So I closed and sold the other restaurants. And now I want to travel. And, because of COVID, we had a lockdown, so I didn't think about starting any kind of projects. And I might, I'm intrigued by the idea of writing a cookbook with Nancy.
Yeah.
And
No, that's yeah. You should we should do that. Yeah.
I'm
and
trying, yeah. I'm trying to locate the Oinkster here in Manila, as you said. We'll see.
yeah, they were on. I saw their Instagram page. They seem to be very focused on bacon, serving everything with bacon.
Well, okay. Anyway,
But anyway, um,
what are your favorite? Okay, how trendy are you now? In touch with the new Filipino dishes like sisig. You know sisig, right? What
yeah.
would you like to explore?
Well, Sisig is a great dish. It's a fun dish, and if I had my preference, and I'm sure if you did, working your way through all the different ones out there, I would still enjoy the classic. Made from the pork cheeks and all of the odd facial parts of the pig. That's what I want to eat. Um, But I think it's good, because that's become such a very popular dish uh, that a lot of the younger chefs here, it's like, oh, well, all of our friends, when we go drinking, this is what we want to eat. So there's that whole generation who wants to eat that way. Um,
Well, anyway, what's your fearless forecast about at least two Filipino dishes that you think will make a hit post pandemic, like let's say mid 2022 in LA?
um, I would say lechon. Uh,
Lechon.
But people they're not cooking the whole pigs anymore. They're
Yeah,
taking
their belly.
the belly and with the skin on and roasting that. That's become very popular, and um, I think adobo and barbecue. You know, maybe not the chicken intestines, but but the regular Filipino barbecue, like your family made at Aristocrat. Um, I think those, if I ever go to, they opened a big food outlet at the Seafood City Market here in Eagle Rock, and so they sell prepared food. One side is called Crispy Town, which is all fried, crispy things like crispy pata and chicharron, things like that. But they've got piles of barbecue skewers, and this stuff just flies. It's the most popular thing. I see a lot of non-Filipinos. It's like, oh, it's barbecue and it's got sauce on it. I want that.
That might be your next restaurant.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be kind of fun to do a barbecue. But one of my chef friends who's doing pop-ups, very, very busy guy, very popular. We have to get him on your show. He goes by Kuya Lord, and
Ah,
um,
interesting.
his name's Lord Maynard. So
Kuya Lord.
he's he's on Instagram. He's doing some amazing stuff and regional cooking. But he's doing the lechon and he's doing a lot of the barbecue, and he cooks out of his house and people come pick it up. And this guy is so busy. And I'm trying to help him find a restaurant space so he can have a restaurant. But I mean, that's what's happening now. Uh, that's what people are really eating up. Um, the barbecue and the
Yeah.
roast pork belly
Yeah.
lechon.
How many
Sandy
years have
Daza
you
said
been in the
barbecue nga daw. Barbecue
yeah,
would
how
be
many years have you been in what you're doing?
Uh,
30?
I've
20?
no
been
more.
45 years
Yeah.
being a chef, and I've opened 13 restaurants. Not all mine, of course, but from start to finish. Conceptualizing the menu, being involved in the build out. That's one of the hardest things in this business is opening a restaurant from the ground up,
Okay.
because I know a lot of chefs out there, they
Wow.
take over a kitchen that's already set up and established, and um, but coming up with a menu that's balanced, and then hiring the staff and training them, and organizing all the policies and procedures of ordering, inventories, running the kitchen.
Mhm.
So I'm tired. I've done a lot. I paid my dues. So
I have
Yeah.
a feeling when you come back from Italy, you'll be back cooking again.
But
yeah,
45 years, like that's really some
Yeah.
stuff.
yeah, it's a long time. And it's funny because if I wrote where I started and all the places along the way, and it was quite a journey. But not only for me, but just watching what's happened to the restaurant industry, globally, nationally, and locally, uh, watching how food has evolved.
Yeah.
It's amazing. One of the things that's happened, and I'm sure it's happening in Manila. So everything that I reference, I actually wanted to ask you, Anton, uh,
Yes.
about Manila, the Philippines, what's happening to the food scene there. But there was a time when, excuse me, we had a handful of fine dining restaurants in Los Angeles, and everybody went there for special occasions. Well, over the years, those places weren't so special anymore. And not that the quality went down, but all these people down below came up, elevated their cooking ability, the quality of the ingredients, the plating, the presentation. All of that became elevated. And I have a feeling you would say the same thing about Manila, that there's a lot more of these places where you can eat, little bistros
Yeah.
that where you can eat better than any other fine dining restaurant in Manila, or just as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So what's trending here are of course the garden restaurants. So before, most of the restaurants are concentrated in the city because of the pandemic. Everybody, all the s- all the restaurants around the city, so like Tagaytay, Pampanga, people are driving all around it. You have better food at the same time, better, authentic
Atmosphere.
environment,
Yeah.
better nature atmosphere. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're correct. There's also a lot of innovation, of course. And Manila is really like LA in a sense, or it's one of those places, at least here
Right.
in Asia, where you can get the best Spanish food, best Chinese food, best American food, best Filipino food in one place. So yeah, it's an exciting scene, but there's also a lot of young people going up. In fact, actually, when we were tracking the diaspora, a lot of the Filipinos now are in key executive chef positions in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. If you look at it, because before there were no executive chefs that are
They're all
Filipinos.
European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all European. But now, we've been talking to a lot of them in Singapore, in Australia, etc. Some of our top pastry chef went to Australia. So we're trying to also, because Filipino, in a sense, is not really limited to Manila. We are the biggest diaspora, in a sense. But our goal is also just to keep our understand the culinary DNA, because if you don't understand it, it's kind of mixed, from people looking in, it's like a mixed
Yeah.
DNA.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you could also say that, we borrowed from many countries, from Indonesia, from China, the Spaniards, and even the Americans contributed something. But we do have things that are uniquely Filipino.
Like
Um,
what?
well, like kare-kare,
mhm,
adobo, sinigang.
mhm.
Um, um, I mean, we could sit around and drink beers, and I'm
Yeah,
sure we'd
around
come
it.
up
Yeah.
with many other dishes that are uniquely Filipino.
Yeah.
But no, you mentioned Spanish restaurant. I remember when I was there, my cousin took us to a he said, "Oh, this is the best Spanish restaurant in Manila." And
Which
one of my favorite things, I don't remember the name of it, but one of my favorite things is callos,
Yeah.
mhm.
which is very Spanish. And if you go to Spain, um, it's slightly different the way they make it. But there's a style that I'm used to that my mother used to cook. And then when I ordered it there, whoever was in the kitchen put patis in it. And I thought, oh, no, this doesn't belong. But I mean, these are the things that, evolve and change. And that
Yeah.
I noticed that if you went to 10 restaurants, and again, I'm talking about 25 years ago, actually
Hmm.
longer than that,
Hmm.
uh, uh, a lot of the menus looked the same. Everybody had, you know, very similar things.
Yeah,
But
lumpia Shanghai.
if you dig really deep, uh, it Filipino food is so rich and diverse.
Very.
Just the things that my family ate.
Hmm.
That I mentioned. Maybe you know this caldo portugués, because whenever I ask a Filipino if they know what caldo portugués is, they have no idea. But this is
What
something
the-
my family ate all the time, and I don't know if this was a Guerrero thing, but uh, it was like a stew, like a sinigang, but it had Chinese pressed duck, it had Chinese sausage and
Ah.
beef, and I think cabbage. It had so many ingredients, and that
By
was
the way, Anton, the Guerrero he's talking about is the Leon Maria Guerrero line, right?
yes.
Yeah. And David, who else are the your cousins here? There in Manila?
Well, my one cousin, we actually saw one of his plays when we were there. Nono Padilla,
Nonon Padilla. Yeah. Yes.
yeah, and then my cousin Gemma Cruz. She
Mm.
became the minister of travel, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but
But you know what? I'd like to challenge you or the young Filipinos because there's such a big gap between in desserts. Filipino desserts are rice based. So you have all the kakanin, biko, sapin-sapin, palitaw and all and but going up there to another level where you can have wedding cakes and all that, it becomes so American. There's what I see is there's a big gap between the kakanin which is served in the bilao and it's just it's not given that much glam or bling compared to an American style or Euro style cake. That's what I'd like to as a challenge. But we're seeing like did you know there's already calamansi cupcake, right? Or durian pie. These things they just have to come out and be more developed. What do you think? Right.
well, one place to start would be looking what other chefs are doing. And who chefs who have done it successfully. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, my partner, um, she's American and she's a pastry chef. She's been a pastry chef for almost, I think, at least 30 years. So we've worked together for the last 22 years. We've worked together. And so she wanted to be involved in whatever I was doing that was Filipino. If we did an event or special menus, she
Nice.
would come up with things. Like she made this, ube flan, and it was something we served at this restaurant Linq, which was very popular. And we got the attention of some of the most prominent pastry chefs. They wanted to come in to try that. But Jan made these little lumpia. They're like chopsticks, but she filled them with frangipane, the almond paste, and
Mhm.
rolled them up like a very skinny lumpia. So
Yeah.
that was one of the garnishes for that dish. And then she made a sauce with coconut milk and tapioca,
Good.
and it was very dramatic. And we actually, I gave her Sandy Dawes' recipe for what was that dish that he made?
Bibingka Royal. Is that the one?
No, it was. Oh God,
A recipe by his
it's like
mom,
a
probably.
coconut. It's like a coconut custard, but it had you serve it with pinipig and but it's coconut milk and coconut water with gulaman.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Maha Blanca. Maha Blanca.
yeah, it's almost like a maja blanca.
Mm.
But he made that, and I kept the recipe. And one day I showed it to her, and she goes, "Oh, let's make this." And so there's some interesting things you can do. You look at jackfruit, uh, bananas, mangoes. There's so many exotic fruits that are available that um, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
you can make like crumble with Filipino fruit.
Yeah.
Using mango and jackfruit and making a crisp with uh, some exotic ice cream, maybe a coconut ice cream infused with pandan or
Yeah.
you know.
But Chef Andre, what was going on your mind when you created the ube milkshake? That was way ahead of its time.
Well, one day the people who make the ice cream for us for our milkshakes, it's a small family owned company, and they make the best ice cream for milkshakes. And one day I was at their store and I saw that they had ube ice cream, and I thought, oh, ube, let's order some and try making an ube milkshake. So I made I'm sorry, what do you call that ube paste where you cook the ube down?
Ube halaya.
Halaya.
Yeah. And so we made that, and then we would scoop that to elevate the ube flavor even more, intensify it. And you don't need to be Filipino. Once you get a sip of that, it's like, oh my God, what is this stuff? It's
Okay,
amazing.
that's nice.
And so right after we introduced that, Jonathan Gold came in to review the restaurant. Jonathan Gold,
Okay.
he was, I think, the only restaurant critic to win a Pulitzer Prize. And so he was local in Los Angeles. He wrote for the LA Weekly, but he was a very prominent restaurant critic with a huge following. Uh, uh, and that just blew his mind when he came in to review the Oinkster. It's like all he could think about was this ube milkshake. So the heading of the article is, "Would you like fries with that ube shake?"
There's now ube cheesecake.
Yeah, no, there's ube everything.
That's ube everything now. But when did you do this? The milkshake? It was years ago, right?
Yeah, that was in I think I want to say 10 years ago we started that.
Okay. Yeah, a long time ago. Wow. So inspired with our conversation, chef. Really, and actually in the show, we really wanted to talk to the original gangsta, as what the young people would call it, the OG of this industry.
What do you
And
call it? I'm sorry, I don't know that.
OG,
OG, the chefs would
which means
call
old gangster. Uh,
old gangster.
let's say let's use the term pioneers. We are the pioneers over
Yeah,
here.
the pioneers.
Well,
That sounds
because
so old.
No, the old gang, the original gangster means these are the
Oh,
crazy ones. These are the
okay.
crazy ones
yeah, we were
who,
pushing the envelope and
yeah,
kind of setting things up and um, But everything happens because the time is right. The
Yes.
climate is right
Yeah.
for whatever we are doing. I mean, I started cooking when the celebrity chef thing started here, and I became a celebrity chef by default. There was never an intention, on my part. It's like, oh yeah, I want to be famous, doing this. No, I wanted to be famous because people recognize that I was a good cook and they like to eat whatever I was cooking. And that was the intention. And, success follows you when you have
Mhm.
the right intention.
That's
And
that's that's nice to know. That's good to. That's very inspiring. Success follows you. Yeah.
and so again, I would tell the young chefs, be genuine. Don't do pretentious food. Do do cook from your heart, and cook from what you know, and use the cookbooks, use the great chefs for inspiration, but don't copy them. You know, uh, be inspired by them, and because I know when if I've mentored chefs in my kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
I always taught them how to be very good cooks, and or how to manage the staff, how to develop uh, loyalty from your staff, how treat them and treat them with respect and dignity, and they'll follow you anywhere.
But what about you? Who inspires you? Who are the chefs who inspire you, dead or alive?
Uh, wow. I mean, there was a chef. God, who? I mean, there was a lot of chefs. Um, I would follow, and I can't think off the top of my head now because there were so many. I was reading books about all the great French chefs, all the Michelin starred chefs. I would study their habits, um, how they worked, their whole work ethic, and I think, well, this is a chef's life. That's who I want to be. I want to aspire to be that caliber of chef.
Yeah.
Not because they were famous, but I admire their work. I admire their work ethic. I admired their approach to food, and there's a lot of chefs like that.
Mm-hmm.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Any final question, Nancy? Um,
What's your post-pandemic plan? Do you think business will be better next year?
Yes, just before the pandemic, that was the industry was doing well, and there was a lot of excitement, and I think um, there's a lot of caution out there, and maybe people are a little hesitant, but I think it's going to come back, and um, people are traveling. They've got the internet, and locally, I don't care where you live. If you live in a small town in America, or you live in a province somewhere in the Philippines, that um, you're always going to find good food, and hopefully that'll inspire people, because I'm very optimistic about where we're headed post
Good.
pandemic. I mean, I know there's a lot of issues with you know uh, climate change and how it's affecting our food supplies, and um, I think the big thing is food's gonna get healthier,
Okay.
and it's gonna get fresher. It's gonna get healthier, and people are going to pay attention to that. But I know the industry is going to come back in a big way.
Good to know. Good to hear that from you. Yeah.
All right.
Can you give us a few very short line to these young chefs who want to be like you, who want to succeed?
Uh, well, you've got to work hard. You have to be willing to do the work, and you have to be really good at every part of the kitchen, whether it's learning how to process fish or do pastry. You have to master every part of the kitchen. And you have to be like I said, you have to have the willingness to work hard and show up every day. And also just pay attention. Go out there and eat some great food, and recognize what great food is, and so you'll know when you make something great, you'll recognize that it is great.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Andre.
Thank you,
I'm
Chef.
so happy we got you.
Yeah.
So inspiring to
Yeah.
hear directly from someone who sees it all for the last few years
Yeah.
and moving forward as well.
Yeah. You don't look your age like you've worked for 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy your trip to Europe and Paris. Wow.
Yeah, I will.
And
Yes.
the book.
The book that needs to be
Yeah,
done. That needs to be done. Maybe
Yes,
after.
follow me on Instagram. When I get back, I'm going to post a lot of pictures from the trip.
That's good.
Yes.
So I'm trying to go to this restaurant. It's about an hour outside of Milan. It's a Michelin-starred restaurant, but they make the culatello.
Huh?
It's a special kind of prosciutto. They only make it in that region.
Uh-huh.
It's very special. I don't know if I'll get over there, but if I do, it should be a pretty amazing post.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chef. Thank you to all those people watching on the live stream. Make sure to like and subscribe our Awesome Planet in Facebook and YouTube. And please share this to family and friends who wants to be inspired.
Yeah,
because a lot of young chefs now entering the industry, and they're excited about the post-pandemic opportunity, especially in our industry. So
Say hello to Sandy. I'm sure he's listening.
Okay. Yeah, and I got to catch up with him. I was joking with him last time. We have to go visit a wet market again soon.
Yeah.
He wasn't too excited about that.
All right.
all right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Good
Have a
night,
good
guys.
trip, Andre.
Have a good trip.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. God bless.
The
Okay.
Andre.
Can you do a short clip?